The day everything changed, Ethan Carter never thought of himself as special. He was just a mechanic, someone who lived quietly in the shadows of the town he called home. His days were long, filled with the constant hum of engines, the smell of motor oil, and the occasional small talk with customers at the local garage. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was simple, and Ethan liked it that way. His house was small and tucked away at the edge of town, the kind of place most people drove past without noticing. But to Ethan, it was home. A modest space with a worn-out couch, a kitchen that could barely fit 2 people, and shelves lined with books he hardly had time to read. The bills were paid, the lights stayed on, and that was enough. Most evenings, Ethan would drive home in his old Ford truck, listening to the radio hum softly as he tried to forget the aches in his back from leaning over cars all day. But this evening felt different. Maybe it was the heavy rain pounding against his windshield, or the way the streetlights flickered faintly in the distance. Something was in the air, something Ethan couldn't quite place. As he turned onto the narrow road leading out of town, he saw her. A lone car sat on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly against the downpour. Beside it stood a woman, hunched over and clutching her coat tightly around her body, as if the fabric alone could shield her from the storm. Ethan's first instinct was to drive on. It was late, and he was cold, tired, and hungry. But the look on her face, the helpless, distant stare of someone stranded, tugged at something deep within him. He sighed, slowing the truck and pulling over just ahead of her. As he stepped out, the rain immediately soaked through his jacket, sending a shiver down his spine. "Need some help?" he called out over the sound of the rain. The woman looked up, eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and relief. Yes, please, I think the battery died. It won't start." Ethan nodded, already walking toward the hood. "Pop the latch for me." Her hands fumbled as she hurried to the driver's seat and did as he asked. Ethan worked quickly, his fingers numb from the cold as he hooked up the jumper cables from his truck. The rain wasn't letting up, and his breath came in short bursts as he tried to stay focused. After a few tries, the engine roared to life. The woman let out a breathy laugh, stepping out of the car. Her hair clung to her face, drenched from the rain, but the relief in her eyes was unmistakable. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her arms around herself to keep warm. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped." Ethan shrugged. "It's nothing. Just glad you're all right." "No, really," she insisted. "Let me pay you." Ethan held up his hand. "Don't worry about it. Just help someone else if you get the chance." For a moment, she didn't say anything. Her eyes lingered on him as if she wanted to say more, but couldn't quite find the words. Finally, she extended her hand. "I'm Olivia," she said softly. "Olivia Bennett." "Ethan Carter," he replied, shaking her hand briefly. Her fingers were cold against his calloused palm. "Well, Ethan Carter," Olivia said with a small smile. "I owe you one." He chuckled, shaking his head. "We'll call it even." As she drove away, Ethan stood by his truck, watching her disappear into the distance. He told himself it was just another encounter, another rainy evening. But something about it lingered in the back of his mind. 2 days passed, and Ethan had almost forgotten about the woman on the side of the road. His life slipped back into its usual rhythm: early mornings, long shifts, and quiet nights. But everything changed that morning. Ethan was under the hood of a rusted Chevy, halfway through an oil change, when his phone buzzed. He grunted, wiping his hands on a rag before answering. "Ethan, it's Mark," his neighbor's voice said hurriedly. "You need to get home now." "Mark, I'm working—" "No, listen," Mark interrupted. "There's a helicopter, right in front of your house." Ethan froze, the phone pressed tightly to his ear. "A what?" "You heard me. A helicopter. Big one, too. Looks like something out of a movie." Ethan blinked, processing Mark's words. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. Get home." Ethan didn't bother to clean up. He grabbed his jacket, left the garage in a hurry, and jumped into his truck. His mind raced the entire way home. A helicopter? In his front yard? It didn't make sense. When he turned onto his street, Ethan nearly slammed on the brakes. There it was, a sleek black helicopter parked neatly on the grass, blades still and quiet. Around it stood several men in sharp suits, their faces unreadable. Ethan's heart pounded as he parked the truck and approached cautiously. One of the men stepped forward with a polite but firm smile. "Mr. Carter?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's me." The man extended a letter. "I'm here on behalf of Olivia Bennett." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "Olivia?" He opened the letter, his rough hands trembling slightly. "Thank you for your kindness. It meant more than you know. Please come with us." Ethan reread it, his heart hammering. He looked back at the helicopter, at the suited men standing calmly, waiting for his response. Why would she send this?" he asked. The man smiled faintly. "You'll understand soon enough." Ethan hesitated for a long moment. The logical part of his brain told him to walk away, that things like this didn't happen to people like him. But curiosity pulled at him like a rope, drawing him forward. With a slow nod, Ethan followed the man to the helicopter. The flight felt like something out of a dream. Ethan stared down at the town shrinking beneath him, his thoughts spinning wildly. Where were they taking him? And why? It wasn't long before the helicopter descended toward a sprawling estate on the edge of town, a place Ethan had never seen before. As they landed, he stepped out, eyes wide as he took in the grand mansion before him. It looked like something from another world, with towering windows and gardens stretching as far as the eye could see. A butler led him inside, guiding him through the halls until they reached a large room overlooking the gardens. And there, standing by the window, was Olivia. She turned slowly, her eyes softening as they met his. "Ethan." He stepped forward, still unsure what to say. "Olivia, what is all this?" She smiled gently. "You didn't know who I was when you helped me, did you?" "No," Ethan admitted. "My family owns this estate," Olivia explained, "and a good portion of the businesses in this town." Ethan's brows furrowed. "I don't understand." "You stopped," Olivia said softly, "when no one else did. That meant more to me than you realize." She gestured toward the table behind her. On it sat an envelope and a set of keys. "The envelope contains enough for you to live comfortably," Olivia said. "The keys are for a new car, but there's more. I have a position open here, one that requires someone I trust." Ethan's mouth felt dry. "Why me?" "Because you didn't hesitate to help a stranger," Olivia replied. "People like you deserve to be recognized." Ethan stared at the envelope, his heart pounding. He hadn't expected any of this. After a long silence, he exhaled slowly. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Olivia said softly. "Just know this, kindness can change everything,